This is a bullseye composition. That means we have one dominant object in the center. One dominant picture element would be a better phrase. Everything else in the image should be subservient to this particular picture element. All lines should lead to it, and anything that distracts from this needs to be eliminated or, or muted so it doesn't distract from the composition. There are a couple problems within the image that need to be addressed. We have this edge merger right here. This is a good leading line. It comes down and leads you into the main picture element, but where it merges with the edge here, it tends to pull you right out of the image. On the other side, we have the same problem with this beam, which also merges with the edge. And this portion of the picture element is too close to the edge when we look at the spacing on the rest of it. So we need to increase this spacing to isolate this element better. Now, our eye is always drawn to the brightest things in the image, and because we have this little, looks like a paper plate up here, that's going to tend to pull your eye away, especially because we have these leading lines leading to it. So we're going to have to eliminate that. And we also have over here this white line and the little dot here. Again, ambiguous object, doesn't add to the image, so we'll get rid of it. Now, the first thing I do with almost every single image I work with is I go on up and I do adjust shadow highlight. And we can already see that it has dramatically increased shadow detail without affecting the highlight detail. Now we can go in and use these sliders to bring that down to where we want it to be, and we have tremendous adjustability. And that's why I like doing this first, because I can put the tonality where I want it to be or where I need it to be if I'm going to do further adjustments. Because a picture, when you work on a picture, you tend to lose shadow detail the more you work on it. So I want to make sure I've got enough in there to start with. So I'm going to, yeah, it looks pretty good. Then you can just check the other ones a little bit. This is midtones, yeah. I like that down there. And let's see if I want to bring any more detail into the highlight areas. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And so now we can, I made the error. I should have duplicated this background before I did the adjustments so that we could see the difference. My bad. But you should always duplicate the background before you go any further, which we're going to do right now. Now, the next issue is to expand the image so that we can correct these two edge merger issues. There's always more than one way to accomplish the same outcome in Photoshop. So, no, I'm going to show you the way I do it. It may not be the same way other people do it. And like I said, it makes no difference what technique you use. The object is to achieve a certain result. So the technique I use for expanding the canvas is fairly quick and easy. I click on the cropping tool, and instead of pushing in, I pull out to increase the area that I want to add information. And then this leaves the white space here. I click on the check to approve that. Now what I need to do is fill these areas with information. And there's a new tool in Photoshop called Content Aware, which I think is a fantastic tool. So I'm going to select this. So I've now selected the area, but the area has been selected just to the edge of the image. So I usually go to select modify and go into expand, and I've got this set for 3, and I say okay, and what that does is it pushes the selection into the image just a little. And that avoids getting a line there that shows that you did something. So we're going to go back up, go to File. Whoops, I always go to the wrong place on that. Go to Image, go to Fill. Now we can see when we have to click up here, we have lots of different choices. The choice you want is Content Aware. And then say OK. And that's pretty amazing how well that filled that right in. Now it still merges off the edge, but we're going to fix that by doing some cloning in a few minutes. So we have that side done. I usually just go up and do deselect. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Click here, go on up, go to Fill, go to Content Aware. And again, that's done a pretty damn good job of filling that in. And again, we'll clone this little area out here so we still don't have the merger. So I'm going to go up and do deselect again. Now we'll start doing our cloning. Anytime you're going to clone, you always want to do it on a layer for several reasons. Okay, my cloning tool. Now I've set the cloning tool to a size and a soft edge. So if you click up here, you can change the size, the hardness, and you can use different brushes. I usually just use these soft brushes here. And that's what we have. So we're going to come down. Now you need to select the area you want to clone from. So because these two pieces fit together rather closely here, I'm just going to select just above there. Option Shift. Option click. And then I'm just going to take now that no longer have the edge merger. Now we're going to come on over here and we're going to do the same thing in here. We're just going to select some of this. And I try and work my way down in from both angles. I also try and find texture someplace else in the image so that I don't end up getting a repeated texture, which is very distracting. So we've now taken care of those two edge mergers. Now we'll take care of this highlight distraction up here by doing the same thing, just selecting down here and following it up in to just continue that through the plate to get rid of it. Click down here and catch the shadow from the edge. Get a little bit from the I-beam here. And there, it's taken care of. Now we'll just take this one out. And we also have a little line up here at the top. Get rid of that. Now, you may say, well, how much difference can that make? Well, because it's on the layer, I can show you. Now you can see how it really helps isolate that center of interest so that your bullseye is more effective. Now the next step is you have to make a decision. Do you want to work out into a border or do you want to just work to the edge? I almost always choose to put a border around the image before I start editing because then my edits will bleed out into that and create a very interesting effect. In the end, if I don't like that, I can just crop back to the image edge. So the way I do that again is I take the crop tool, hold down the Option key, and as you drag out then, you can see that it moves it equally on all sides. So it's a pretty easy way to get your border. Now you just got to eyeball it. Remember, you can always crop it back later. So there's the image. Now, the last thing you want is this bright white because, again, your eye is attracted to the lightest area of the image. Therefore, it's going to be pulled directly out of the image. So what I usually do is I drop a color in the outside, and I try and find a color. I use the eyedropper. Whoops. I use the eyedropper, and I come on in and I try and find a nice neutral color that isn't merging very much with the background. I mean, with the edge. I like that one right there. And then select the area. Whoops, my resolution, tolerance is too high. Let's take that down to 5. Deselect, click again. Oh, that's because I'm on the wrong layer. Duh. Go back down. Deselect. Now I have that. Again, we're just going to go back up to the fill again. And this time we're going to fill with the foreground color. Now I want to merge down the layer that we did all the cloning on. And again, I'm going to duplicate that layer. Next, I want to do a shadow highlight. I want to do a contrast adjustment. And again, that's on a layer, brightness and contrast. And again, we can check it. We like it. You can either merge it down, or you can make a copy of both of them together by holding down the Option key, going up and going Merge Visible, and this will place a copy of those two on the top of the stack. And in that way, when we modify this one, we can still go back and change our mind later on if we want. Now I'm not going to continue this whole video because it would end up being hours long, because from this point I start making lots and lots of decisions on how I want to manipulate the image. But I'm just going to show you this one of the steps of the process so you can see how it works with this border and why I like it. So I'm going to go to Filter. I'm going to come down and go to Topaz Filter, go to Impressions. Now it doesn't matter what kind of tool you decide to use. It could be any image editing things. You could be using your brushes, you could be using any one of the art type techniques, and this border will react in the same way. So I'm going to click on Pencil Sketch. That's the one I like the most. And I'm going to click into Adjust, but we can already see what's happened to the border, which is very interesting. And I'm going to take my brush size down, and I'm going to increase my stroke length. Oops, I had the wrong one. I did width, but it doesn't matter. So I'll pull this back down. And you can see how we have spaces that we can see in here. Any good painter, I shouldn't say that, a good painting technique is to add an underpainting color. And where it says background down here, we're just going to click and put a little orange in the background. pops the image up and gives it more life. You can see it in here. In fact, I think for this one I might want a brighter orange. There we go. Now, we can see how the stroke is run out into the edges. Now, when I actually work the image, I'll end up with like 4 or 5 of these layers, and I will erase certain portions of the layer so we can see how the layers underneath. And this was going to be my first layer. It would be the layer that would deal with the outside edge. So I want to emphasize this bleeding off the edge. So I'm going to take the brush size back up a little bit. And I'm going to open it up so a little bit more of that orange shows through. There we go. And you can see how dramatic it is when you get that orange underpainting in there working for you. And now I'm just going to come down and I'm going to adjust the brightness. And remember, I'm not really concerned with this. I'm concerned with the edges. This is why it takes so long. It requires a little bit of playing to get this the way you want it to be. There, that's starting to, yep. See, I want to get that color out into that outside edge. There we go. So that's what I would go with. And remember, all on this layer that I'm going to be using is probably from here to here. And I'll be changing what happens inside of this space. But this is just a quick overview of what we're doing to make this bullseye composition be more effective. And that's what you have to remember. Every decision you make within the processing of the image should be to enhance whatever the compositional theme of the image is. And in this particular case, the compositional theme is bullseye, so I want everything to move towards the center, and I want to reduce anything that's going to lessen that effect. I can see as the processing is going on, this area here has gotten too white, so I would go in later on and clone that out, or I would paint a color over it to reduce its brilliance so it doesn't pull your eye away from this. Now this line coming in here, because it starts dark and moves to white, it actually becomes a leading line that leads the eye into the image. So remember, all of your decisions should be made based upon what you want your image to be in the end. And you have to have a concept. And the concept in this particular situation is bullseye. And that this is the major picture element, these buoys.